This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, and my partner in crime is alongside me as usual, the Doc from Doc and Jock, and from the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, that is John Macaroon, the psychologist, John Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Very well. First of all, before we get started with the recording, big shout out to Jason. He had his son delivered on Super Bowl Sunday. Great deal, man. I know he's been taking a little bit of a hiatus from the Motor City Sports Rant podcast, but all props to Jason and the missus. Everything's working out okay, and I can't wait to get back to talk to him and hear about, the delivery process, having his firstborn son. But Jason, from everybody here at the network, good stuff, sir.
Big props to him, and a special shout out to me because I don't have a kid. How about that? No kid for me, so that's a good thing for yours truly, Vito Jerome Chirco. Now, Doc, we have some bad news to report regarding a projection made for the Tigers. And MLive.com wrote a piece about it and broke it down, and it is PECOTA, the PECOTA projection of the Tigers season coming up. Now, it's premature. It's hard to predict, and the Royals are dead last, I believe, and I don't know how that is. At 69, I think they gave the Royals 69 wins, and I'm going to get up the article here to verify everything here. But my thought process initially regarding this is that the Tigers were kind of put in the right position in the AL Central. Now, I don't like, Doc. Now, if you read the article, too, you'll see that the Minnesota Twins are projected to finish better than the Tigers. I don't get that really that much. Now, the Indians winning the Central, that's predictable and very highly likely. But the Royals finishing in dead last with, I think, 69 wins, that far, under 500, I don't see that happening. And I don't see the Twinkies still finishing above the Tigers in the Central in 2017.
See, I disagree a little bit with the report. Now, what's driving the fact that they still have the Tigers being outscored, I believe in the neighborhood, they have the Tigers scoring 729 runs in the season and giving up 774. Now, part of the reason is, of the 9 regulars in the Tigers lineup, only 3 are projected to have better numbers than 2016. James McCann, Jose Iglesias, and Justin Upton. They're really down on Ian Kinsler and JD Martinez. Now, I kind of disagree with that a little bit. I understood, because you said it when we talked about it earlier on previous editions of the podcast, that you believe it's a 75 to 85 win team. We're not really optimistic about this team because of the manager, because really the bullpen hasn't improved significantly. But I do believe JD Martinez can be consistent. I just think that I disagree with the fact that McCann, Iglesias, and Upton will be the 3 guys that will improve. I think McCann and Iglesias, I'm not sold on them that they're going to have much better years in 2017 than in 2016. I think it's accurate to say around 75 to 85 wins, but 77 might be a tad low if the starting pitchers can stay healthy, if the starting pitchers can be the strength of the team. If the starters are the strength of the Detroit Tigers in 2017, there's an opportunity and a possibility that we could have more success here. But it is, when I read it and I sent it to you, it's further, pushing the notion that a lot of people already feel is that the one word, I guess, that you would describe the Detroit Tigers as we sit today, skeptical.
And PECOTA is saying that also Jordan Zimmermann is not going to have a bounce-back year in 2017, and it sees the rest of the Tigers' rotation outside of JV combining for a 4.57 ERA. Not good at all. A reason why the Tigers are being projected to win as few games as they are currently via this projection measure, which is a measure that Baseball Prospectus uses, by the way, and it's a very popular stat-centric website. And these projections, though, when you look back at them, probably when we look back at them in mid-July or mid-August, Doc, we'll probably say these projections were so off the mark. And I'm hoping we do as Tigers fans. Thing is, you said it to me, what I had said before in earlier editions of Tigers Talk, that the Tigers right now, in my most optimistic view, I see about 83 wins being tops for the Tigers in 2017, which is barely good enough to win an AL wildcard spot. Probably not good enough because of so much parity being present in the American League and in Major League Baseball as a whole, which means Tigers more than likely will miss out on the postseason for a third straight season, which is not good when you consider what they had accomplished before Brad Ausmus got the job as Tiger skipper. And I know they made it his first year on the job as manager. Thing is, if they miss out this year, he's got to be gone. And I think he will. And that's why I think I would label this season for Brad Ausmus as a lame duck season almost for Brad Ausmus.
Really?
What are your thoughts on that? Because Alavila and company, they have kind of laid Ausmus out to fail. I think they have kind of made him a lame duck manager because they haven't made any moves to really improve the ball club. Outside of Alex Avila, they got rid of Cameron Maybin, haven't upgraded the bullpen. The bullpen was horrible last year. It's not going to be any better this year. And you saw these projections from PECOTA, what they predicted. How many guys with an ERA under 4? I believe only 2, Shane Green and Justin Wilson. I mean, that's not good. That is not good whatsoever. Now, I could see Alex Wilson also having an ERA under 4. So I think they were off on that projection of Alex Wilson at least. And Rondon could be a surprise. Could be in for a career year, almost. But that's saying K-Rod will finish with an ERA over 4, your closer? That's not a good sign either. And like I said, the bullpen was shabby last year, and now this year without improving it at all, you can't predict that the bullpen will be that much better, Doc. And that's a reason why I think this projection metric here PECOTA uses is projecting the Tigers for third place in the AL Central.
And each week that we record the podcast, the Tigers go out and sign another bum of the month, another reclamation project. They went out and signed Mike Zagorski after 2 years playing in Japan. Did you see the link I sent you? Dude is hefty, to say the least. And he played his last 2 years in Japan. Another individual that they're trying to kind of, hope that maybe they found a flash in the pan. The signings that have been made haven't been all that impressive. And when I read the paper, all you read about is it's going to take time, it's going to take patience. I just think that with declining attendance the last few years, I just see another season where the attendance declines. I see an up and down year, but I'm not one of those people that believes that Brad Ausmus is actually hung out to dry.
You don't think so, really? Why is that?
I think that the organization realizes that if they bottom out where they're like 20 games under 500, which he hasn't shown that he has been an awful manager, it's one of those things where I do believe the organization realizes that it's not his fault, because I don't think they're going to make him a scapegoat. I'm more nervous and skeptical that whatever season that he has is going to earn him a contract extension because of the fact that he might be, looked upon favorably by everybody in the organization. From all accounts, unless everything turns south and they do bottom out, which unfortunately maybe I'll tease it out and kind of what I'm kind of hoping is going to happen for the Detroit Tigers in 2017. But in essence, the organization believes that, hey, this is a young hotshot manager, and you saw the reports. They feel like if Brad Ausmus is on the open market, he's going to be scooped up quickly, and they don't want to put all their investment in a guy only to have him turn around and go somewhere else, and another team gains the benefit of what they've done with him. So I don't see the Detroit Tigers, unless, barring an unforeseen season where you win like 65 to 70 games and you start seeing some of the players turn on him. He's loved by everybody in the clubhouse. He's been shown to be kind of an average manager. So when I look at the records projection, I think starting below 80 is a little bit low and a little bit demeaning. I just think that anywhere in the 80s, I think, is a realistic projection, because you still have Miguel Cabrera, you still have Victor Martinez, you still have JD Martinez, and I do believe Ian Kinsler and JD Martinez will do some things, maybe not as proficiently in 2017 as they did in 2016, but I do have confidence that they'll be the leaders carrying this team offensively. And if you get Justin Upton continuing the streak that he had at the end of 2016, combined with some decent pitching, you have a chance to win some ball games. So obviously, being long-winded, I'm saying that I'm fearful that no matter what happens, Brad Ausmus is going to be the manager beyond 2017. He's not hung out to dry.
You think because they're setting the bar so low as a ball club because they haven't made any notable moves besides for picking up Alex Avila to be the backup, that's the reason why, in so many words? It was almost the opposite of what I was saying. So really, if he wins 83 games, that might be a good season for him, huh?
Exactly, because many people in the organization are basically admitting, not so much publicly, but behind the scenes, it's pretty obvious they realize, hey, we're cutting payroll, maybe not significantly, but we're not adding. So how is that Brad Ausmus' fault? Now, if he goes out there, and unfortunately we have to kind of wish for it, we have to hope that Brad Ausmus makes mistakes. You got to hope that he takes out a pitcher for another pitcher, and unfortunately, you have to hope for results that go against Brad Ausmus.
So would you rather see him fired or the Tigers succeeding and winning 90 games and winning the division? Because you're kind of sounding like you want to see him fail so much that, you know what, you're fine with the Tigers only winning 77, 79 games if it gets him fired.
If Brad Ausmus is, and this is true for every Detroit team, and I'm on record as saying it, for every Detroit professional team, they could improve upon management and the head coaches.
The Pistons, Stan Van Gundy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This is an underachieving team. I think another coach could get more out of this team. I think Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson have maybe tuned him out. I think that this season you should not be 5 games under 500 with that talent. That talent should be around a top 4 seed if they're playing with a coach that they're willing to go ride or die for. I just think
But they're still in line for the 8th seed, a first-round exit against the Cavs. What a great season, getting knocked out in the first round in 4 games against the Cavaliers for a second straight year. Come on, that's the bar. That's where it's set right now for the Pistons. No. I know, it's not a good look. And Sam Van Gundy should come under more fire. But we're talking about Brad Ausmus. We want to lay it on him here on Tiger Talk and say why he should be under fire constantly throughout the 2017 campaign. And for me, if they win less than 80 games, I say if they win 83 games, he's gone. If I was the GM, the thing is, I could see where there's some pushback from ownership, and they keep him because the bar has been set so low for the 2017 campaign. And now, really quick, Doc, too, I wanted to let you and all the listeners know that these projections from PECOTA and other outlets, they're always setting the win-loss totals for these teams lower than really they more than likely become. So they very much are hard. They are very strict with how they project players and teams to perform. So saying that only a few guys are due for progressions in 2017, Justin Upton, James McCann, Jose Iglesias, well, there might be somebody else that takes a step forward, such as a Bruce Rondon. Jordan Zimmermann, I could see taking a step forward if he's healthy. And how about Daniel Norris over a full season? Matt Boyd over a full season. So there is reason to be optimistic once again about the Tigers, more than we've let on and more than PECOTA has let on with this projection, Doc.
Now let's get into it. Do you think the 3 that they've tapped to have better years, James McCann, Jose Iglesias, Justin Upton, you think they're accurate on that?
Well, I think they've labeled these guys as guys that will have bounce-back years or resurgences or whatever you want to call it, improvements in 2017. I think they've labeled those guys as that, Doc, because for the most part, they were pretty darn poor as offensive performers. Now, McCann all season long, Iglesias was all right at the plate. Upton was terrific in the second half. I think they're projecting more out of Upton because realistically, Doc, when we look at Justin Upton, his numbers, how good his numbers actually came out to be, if he would have had even a decent first half, how great would his numbers have been for the whole entire 2016 campaign with the Tigers? So for me, they're looking at him as a bounce-back candidate, a guy that will take a step forward because he stunk it up in the first half, so you got to believe he's going to do better. He can't do any worse than he did in the first half of 2016. And McCann really can't do any worse than he did for the full season in 2016. And Iglesias, I see kind of staying the same. I don't think he's going to produce more than he did or has as a professional baseball player. I think what we've seen out of Jose Iglesias is what you're going to get out of Jose Iglesias. So I expect his numbers to remain the same for the most part. Now, McCann, yes, I could see some progression. And Justin Upton, I think with a better first half, the numbers will be better. So I see those two guys as being very nice improvement level, guys that will take the next step and show strides at the plate in 2017. So for me, I like those two. Iglesias, not as much in terms of taking that next step or at least improving a little bit at the plate, which is what these projections from PECOTA are projecting currently out of the Detroit Tigers. Now, my other quick point here, Doc, to you and the masses is that, as harsh as this projection is, remember, there is some merit to it. And the reason is because what they're expecting is a guy like Vimar, Ian Kinsler, his power numbers and their power strokes combined to go down. Well, that should be expected. Those guys are getting older. Kinsler kind of fell off in the second half. Vimar definitely did, and in the last month of the season was not clutch, was not good at all at the plate. So seeing those guys reduce their levels of production, well, that's a reason why the Tigers will go down in productivity as a whole. And then losing Cameron Maben, seeing what the center field production will consist of, Tyler Collins being your star center fielder maybe, he's no star. He's no starting center fielder either. And, Mikey Matuk, he might be something. We have Jacoby Jones as a candidate, and I believe they're projecting Jacoby Jones to produce the least amount in 2017 at the plate. Well, all of those reasons stacked up, and then if Jordan Zimmermann doesn't bounce back, Doc, and if Anibal Sanchez is used far too often in the rotation like he was in 2016, well, that's the reason why the Tigers are due for regression as a whole, and that's why you could see them winning less than 80 games. So, once again, there is some merit with this projection, but there's also some reason to be optimistic about why this Tigers ball club could win more than 80 games.
Look what Victor Martinez was able to do with a groin injury the entire year. If you figure that he stays healthy in 2017, then you got to look to a guy like Victor Martinez as being a guy that can contribute. He had well over 20 home runs with a groin injury. I do believe that they're going to be counting on Victor Martinez to do some things, and he is a much-needed left-handed bat, in a lineup predominantly with right-handers.
Oh, you have Alex Avila. A great lefty compliment, but you're right. Vimart has to be as good as he was in the first half. Though remember, he tailed off in the second half. That's the thing people don't, I guess talk about enough, and Kinsler did. I think that's even talked about less, is that Kinsler was not as good with the bat in the second half and in those final months of the season. And Vimart down the stretch, those guys weren't clutch enough. And that scares me as a Tigers fan, and it's a reason to be pessimistic about the Tigers right there. And then, like I said, Sanchez, Pelfrey, the Pelsanch, the combination of those two being used far too often as rotation guys. Well, there's a reason right there why the Tigers could also be worse. And then Zimmermann not being as good as he was before the Tigers got him, and really as good as he was when they first got him, because he came out of the scene and was peerless. His ERA was great, was below 1 at one point. He was a stud, bona fide stud at the top of the Tigers rotation. Then he fell off the face of the earth and couldn't even pitch to anybody, couldn't get anybody out. So the Tigers need him healthy. But if he's not, or if he's close to what he showed the Tigers, what he showed the fans last year in the second half, which was a very mediocre and really less than mediocre starting arm. If he shows that again in 2017, that's a cause to be concerned and a reason why the Tigers are more like a 77-win ball club, if not worse, like a 75 or 74, 73-win ball club, which would be very bad. And that right there should cost Brad Ausmus his job, even though it might not, because they're viewing the season perhaps as a year in which it doesn't really matter what they do. But I think he's being viewed as a lame duck manager. They're hanging him out to dry and to fail this season. That's why I think if they win 73 to 75 games, 73 to 78 games, he gets ousted automatically at the end of the season, Doc.
All right, let's take our first time out, our first and only break of this podcast. I want to dive into your thoughts about Jordan Zimmermann, the pitching rotation, who is poised to have a breakout year and who may take a step back. Stay with us on the Tigers Talk podcast here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc here for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for your continued support and allowing us to keep the studio lights on, the microphones hot here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you like what you're listening to, you like the variety of podcasts that you hear, definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's the easiest way to support us. You get all the news from the network. You can check out the work from Vito, myself, all the guys that are putting out great content almost each and every day. And hey, if you're prone to shop online, click through that Amazon banner, go about your business, shop, and then when you're on that Amazon page, just bookmark it. Anytime at all that you make an online purchase, it kicks us back a little something and helps us keep this project going. We've been going strong since 2013, and that's been largely due to the support of our supporters, and we greatly appreciate it. DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
And back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, I'm your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, alongside my sidekick, as usual, the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Macaroon. And Doc had said before the commercial break that we would talk about some starting pitchers of the Tigers and give our little projections about what we expect out of them in 2017. And Doc, what do you have for me?
Why do you think PECOTA thinks that Jordan Zimmermann's not going to have a bounce-back year? I understood when the Tigers didn't extend Max Scherzer, they felt like they didn't want to allocate that much money to a pitcher going on, late into his 30s, making a ton of money. And as you've seen the deal in which Scherzer struck, he's going to get paid a bunch of money at the back end. Even when he's retired, he's going to get some funds from his contract. So the Tigers did spend, 9 figures on a pitcher in Jordan Zimmermann, and his start at the beginning of 2016, many felt, and I even believe you thought about it, that he was on pace if he was going to have the year that he was projected to have at the start of the 2016 season, based upon what we saw. Many thought that he was on pace to maybe even be a Cy Young caliber pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, but injuries ravaged his season, and he was unable to really even get back. And I really believe, and I'm interested to get your take on it, I really believe the Tigers mismanaged Jordan Zimmermann, because there were times when he came back, he wasn't even featuring a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. And he was out there giving up home run after home run. And there were a couple of games where people really pointed to Brad Ausmus going, why on earth are you leaving him out there to take a shelling, to take,
take a dump.
Yeah.
On the Tigers, not on the competition, but on the Tigers. And
especially especially at moments when you needed victories. There were games where you were behind 4 and 5-0 because Jordan Zimmermann obviously did not have his stuff. You and I would see it go, whoa, his control is off. His miles per hour are very low, and anybody that was watching should have pulled him. And I just think that if a Jordan Zimmermann comes back truly healthy and he's dedicated, he's got stuff.
Well, how about Ausmus polling him or using him against the White Sox on that Thursday day game? Horrible start out of Jordan Zimmermann. They rushed him back. He wasn't ready to go. Got blasted by the White Sox, a team that really didn't explode for runs like that very often, but they did so against Jordan Zimmermann. Ausmus mismanaged him big time, and the training staff led by Kevin Rand. He's the guy that goes out there, checks on the guys if they get hurt during a game. I blame it on their shoulders, too, the training staff of the Tigers. And why the heck did they end up allowing Jordan Zimmermann to go out there for those starts? Giving Brad Ausmus the permission, the authorization to put Jordan Zimmermann out there for those outings when he was not in physical condition to do so against major league caliber batting. It wasn't a good thing to see Jordan Zimmermann be used the way in which he was, misused left and right by Brad Ausmus all season long. It didn't help him out for his production. His ERA suffered because of it. And his ERA for the season, after a very good start to the year, it ended up being a 4.87 ERA, and his FIP, his fielding independent pitching, was a 4.42. Not good in either aspect. That tells you right there, he had a very subpar, and really more than subpar, 2016 campaign. He has to bounce back big time. Now, if you were to ask me whether or not he will, I would tell you right now, you've seen him be productive in the past, and really outside of his first 2 years in the league. And the one season, 2009, he started 16 games. The following in 2010, he started 7. Those ERAs were 4.5 and actually worse than 4.5 for those 2 seasons. But after that, his ERA has been very, very solid. His highest ERA since then was on his last year with the Nationals in 2015 before the Tigers got him. So he showed maybe signs of a downward trend at that point when he had that 3.66 ERA in 2015. Thing is, if he can produce even that mark as his ERA for the whole entire 2017 campaign, then that's a big-time upgrade over what the Tigers got out of him in his first season in Motown. And it's something I'm going to say that he can't do. He can't replicate, I think, that good of an ERA, but I'm going to say his ERA ends up being below 4 in 2017. And that means he'd be a solid, very solid number 3. Potential number 2. He might still show that stuff here and there, but I don't think consistently anymore. Because I think now consistently Fulmer is at number 2 in the Tigers rotation behind Justin Verlander.
So in looking at Jordan Zimmermann, you think there's a chance, maybe above average chance, that he has a bounce back year?
Yes, I think big time because his ERA was almost 5 last year. It won't be anywhere close to that. Now, could it be above 4 though still? I think so. There's a chance of that, Doc. But I'm going to say he finishes with an ERA below 4.
Okay.
How about you? What do you think?
See, as you were talking, the thought and question in my mind is maybe just a little bit of buyer's remorse because he's going to get a year older. Is he going to be able to stay in that rotation? It's going to be important because what does everybody say? The most important ability is availability. If he's going to have an up and down year, it's going to cause a big problem because then you're going to have to slot maybe Michael Fulmer in a different spot. You might have to reintroduce Pelfrey. You might have to reintroduce Anibal Sanchez. And none of us, and I don't think any Tigers fan, want any opportunity, any window opened for Anibal Sanchez to come back. I don't think is ever going to get back to being a realistic starter for the Detroit Tigers. So it's going to be very important. One of the top probably 3 players that have to perform for the 2017 Tigers, Jordan Zimmermann. But I do believe Michael Fulmer is going to have a decent year. I know many people are skeptical a little bit at the start that maybe he'll start off a little bit slow, that second-year pitchers sometimes tend to struggle. But do you really believe that Fulmer is an up-and-coming superstar? As I called it, I think there might be some complete game shutouts. There might be some perfect game potentials, some no-hitters out of Michael Fulmer. A guy that you think, a guy like him who's dedicated, who has natural talent. I mean, the Mets were raving about him. Many people across baseball felt like when that move was made by the Tigers that, hey, getting Michael Fulmer was a solid piece. And now that he's been in the major leagues now a season, and now he's going to have the better part of an entire spring training to be with the boys, to get things worked out, I do believe that Michael Fulmer is going to be probably on the verge of superstardom this year.
He's a big-time gamer, a top talent, but you know what? I don't see him being a Justin Verlander, throwing no-hitters. He's not that good, I think. He's not an ace. Now, there's a distinction between a number 1 and a number 2 in a Major League Baseball club's rotation. Hard to distinguish what that, distinction, it's not a clear distinction at times, but I still think you gotta say he's a step or 2, well, definitely a step or 2 right now below Justin Verlander, but I think a few steps below what it takes to be an ace of a major league rotation. So a solid number 2, but throwing no hitters, no way, Jose. Now, We've seen many guys do it, though, that weren't ace caliber arms, So we've seen that in Major League Baseball history. So history could repeat itself with Michael Fulmer, where a guy who you don't see as an ace does throw a no-hitter. And obviously, when you're younger than older, I think it enhances your chances, at times at least, because he still has that fresh arm. So could he throw one? Yeah. But is he that guy that you can expect to be an ace caliber arm every fifth day for the Tigers in the near and the long-term future? I'm going to say no on him. Because honestly, I see Daniel Norris as more of that frontline starting arm going forward. And I think even in the near future, as early as 2017, he could be, I think, a frontline starting arm if he stays healthy. Now, it's always been the big issue with Daniel Norris. Can he stay healthy? Last year, he couldn't. Year before, battled issues, and it hurt his productivity. I think the progress that he's made up to this point, now, he could take a huge, and I mean a huge step forward to become a solid number 3. A bona fide number 3 in the Tigers rotation that can be, I think, a solid number 2, actually. But that's all if he stays healthy. That's a major if, And we can't ever guarantee a person's health, especially a guy with an injury past now in Daniel Norris.
See, I'm more skeptical of Daniel Norris and Matt Boyd. I think that...
Matt Boyd I am. I'll say that.
I think that they both were guys that started to showcase some things in the second half of 2016, but night in, night out, when there were situations where you needed them, it was too up and down for me. Matt Boyd's kind of a pitcher that has stuff. I like what he brings to the table, but what you need is consistency. That's the number one thing that I do believe the Tigers starting rotation is going to need is up and down. You got to be able to give them quality starts because it's one of those situations where this offense right now is a little bit unpredictable. We're hoping that they don't strike out as much, and we'll talk a little bit to end the podcast about, I don't know if you heard about some rule changes potentially that were introduced to the Major League Union, the Players Union, and I'm interested to get your take on it because there's an opportunity, I think, for improvement. And I do believe that the Tigers offense has to help out the pitchers because if it's a situation where it was out of sync like it was in 2016, where the Tigers pitchers would pitch well and the offense would be inconsistent, I do believe you have to have this team be in sync more in tandem. You got to have the defense playing well, you got to have the offense limiting the strikeouts, and you got to have health. And I think with those three, I do believe you could have more consistent results on the diamond if those things do happen. And I do believe the Detroit Tigers have an opportunity if things can turn around. I don't believe it's hopeless. Not a lot of hope, but it's not hopeless. There is talent on this team. It's just the number one question. It's the $1 million question with the Detroit Tigers. Can they put it all together? Can the starters, the offense, and the bullpen and the defense bring it all together for an entire year? Most people say no. There's going to be stretches where they play good baseball. I do believe that, but I don't see the situation where the Detroit Tigers are going to have the ultimate team success because a lot of hope. A lot of hope for Boyd, a lot of hope for Norris, a lot of hope that some guys come back, but in essence, don't see it.
Tigers have to get lucky, too, with the talent they have amassed that they currently have on their roster. If they do, Doc, they could put together an 85 to 87 win ball club for 2017 and make the playoffs as a wild card. The thing is, it's hard to be an eternal optimist now, and you know what? You have always, not been an eternal optimist. I've tried to be the eternal optimist of the two of us, and I still have my doubts about the Tigers in 2017, to say the least, because of concerns regarding Sanchez, Pelfrey being used way too often in the rotation, Zimmermann not bouncing back, and Fulmer having that sophomore regression.
Shout out to Steve Chiamenti. He kind of pointed out, are you seeing it? Kind of a lack of buzz surrounding the Detroit Tigers?
Well, there's a reason why. Maven was dealt, and they've added Alex Avila. That's it. No bullpen reinforcements. They need bullpen help. They need other help on the ball club. They haven't added anything.
But are you talking, besides us, because, we're geekniks, and we talk about it, we would text about the Tigers. We're going to watch no matter what, if they're horrible. But do you feel that amongst your boys? Do you feel like people are talking about the Tigers? Or they're just going, you know what, let's just pass. Let's wait for the new arena and wait to spend our money there?
My boys aren't Tigers boys, so there's no discussion with them about the Tigers.
They're not Tigers guys.
You and I and my brother and dad, we talk about the Tigers the most. What's friends don't get into it.
What's the sense with Dom and your pops?
My dad is always negative. He gave up on the Tigers in May last year after that 7-8 game. They lost 8 out of 11. He gave up that. So he's the eternal pessimist of the family, really. My brother is a White Sox fan, so he could care less. But I still think even him right now, he thinks the Tigers aren't in for a big-time season in 2017. He sees regression out of the ball club and a team that will miss out on the playoffs for a third consecutive season and a third consecutive year under Brad Ausmus.
Now I got a special message for Dom, because I know he listens. A White Sox fan?
You're a dick.
He's always been a dick. That's who he is. That's his M.O.
Is he listening?
No offense.
Does he listen?
He does here and there, actually. Not all the time, though, which is why he's a dick once again. You got to listen more often. But anyways, he's busy with school and everything and following the White Sox more than the Detroit Tigers. But nobody in my family is optimistic right now about the Tigers, even myself. And I'm always, like I said, the eternal optimist of my family as a whole. My brother, dad, and I combined is what I'm talking about here. And Doc, you and I, it's always me too being the eternal optimist. And like I said, right now, best case scenario, about 85 wins, maybe 87, but you're still probably on the outside looking in for a playoff spot in the American League, even finishing with that 87 win total.
Okay, now to end the podcast, did you hear the news about the potential rule changes? The first one, while I look up the rest of them, is to improve the strike zone. Right now, they call strikes below the knees. They're saying what they could potentially do to improve the strike zone is to raise it up a little bit so that it favors the hitters. Because the strikeouts in baseball were at an all-time high in 2016. And because of the fact that pitchers are able to have that low strike below the knees, if they bring it up to the top of the knee, then the lower strike will not be in play anymore. And then pitchers will be forced to pitch up a little bit, which will cause a little bit more contact. So it was brought up before in 2015 and 2016. It's just it's been ignored. And the reason why they want to do it is to improve the offense, to improve a little bit of the pace of play. And they just saw that the number statistically in terms of strikeout was just astronomical. It will favor the hitters in terms of improving the strike zone. What say you?
I would say, honestly, I don't truly care about that too much. I think that it will allow some hitters to hit the ball, make contact more often, like you said, because strikeouts were at, a sky-high level, and you want to see those go down to increase the competitiveness, the intrigue surrounding a ball game, and you want to see these hitters hit. You want to see them hit the big fly. You want to see them produce premium numbers. So I think that would enhance that, Doc, to say the least. And my rule change that is looming that I think would enhance the ball game even more is the intentional walk rule. And they want to do with that, instead of throwing the 4 pitches to make it a true intentional walk, just throw the 4 fingers up, baby, because it makes it so much simpler and quicker. And you know what? Baseball has struggled for so long with the speed of the game, right? The length of the game is 3.5, 4 hours, let's say. That's not a good rate for a game to last that long when you have fans that are tuning the games out anyways after 2 hours. And young people aren't watching these games because they don't have the attention span for these games. So you get rid of that because you already know you're going to walk the guy on 4 pitches intentionally. Just have the 4 fingers go up. And I think that's a brilliant idea and a way to speed up the pace of the game, Doc.
Good stuff, Vito. One last quick point that I want to ask you, because now a lot of people are talking about it behind the scenes, but I'm not sure too many people have debated it on podcasts and on radio. What was the better watch? The Super Bowl or the 2016 World Series where the Cubs came back? For me personally, the Super Bowl was a fun watch, but in totality, because it was a single game, it was only good in the second half, following a long delay, and we'll talk about it probably in the Hombres podcast that you can tune into every Saturday here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. But for me, the totality of the World Series, the Game 6, the Game 7, the extra innings, the rain delay, the Indians coming back, made it for a much better situation, made it for a much better series, in my opinion. And I feel like the 2016 Cubs winning the World Series was a little bit better of a watch, and the World Series was better than the Super Bowl. Not by a lot, but I would say that if you told me World Series or Super Bowl, Cubs or New England Patriots, I take the Cubs because it was more historic. It was very dramatic late in the evening, the comeback by the Indians, and the fact that you had a situation where the Cubs were in control. They had history on their side, kind of going, everybody wanted them to kind of end this streak of futility and win the World Series. They came back and won it, so I would take the World Series all day.
Well, yeah, coming back from 3 games to 1, and against a team I wanted to see beaten in the Cleveland Indians. I didn't want to see the Indians winning. So for me, it was a World Series because of the 7-game span of games and how great the series ended and the way that it ended in a Game 7 and a great Game 7 as well. So in a storied franchise that was, futile, needed a World Series win, had gone 108 years since winning its last World Series championship. The Cubs were long overdue. The city, the support surrounding the Cubs, too. It was great to see all those fans get into it, start backing the Cubs, significantly. People from all over really came together, supported the Cubs, wanted to see the Cubs get it done, and the Cubs got it done in epic fashion in a Game 7 and a great Game 7 ending. So for me, because of that being a 7-game series and the Super Bowl being a lone game, got to give it to the Cubbies and the Major League Baseball World Series, Doc.
So when this podcast drops, we're about 10 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting. About to heat up, Vito. You ready for the grind of a long season? March to October, baby.
Just
maybe early November.
I'll tell you this much. Just hopefully it won't be as downtrodden of a year as it was the first season we did our podcast. Remember that first year? It was the 2015 campaign, a year after making the playoffs for a fourth straight year, winning the division title in the AL Central for a fourth straight year. Ausmus in his second year as skipper. Tigers were miserable that year. So hopefully it's more like last year and a little bit better, because only a little bit better is needed to get the Tigers into the postseason in 2017. But will that happen? Right now, I think we both believe on a scale of Vito's big Vito's over-under, I think we're both thinking below 50% for the Tigers' chances of getting into the playoffs.
No doubt about it. And if you want to hear all the complete archive of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, go check out our YouTube page. All you got to do is type in the search bar, Detroit Sports Podcast. You can hear what Vito thought in the early tenure, his early shows, and you can see how he's progressed to become the B+, podcaster. That
Bonafide B+ podcast stud here of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, the host of 2 podcasts. And check out this one, Tiger Talk, every single Wednesday, and Too Bad Hombres with Doc and I every single Saturday. We're out with that. Guys, enjoy the rest of the week, and talk to you again next Wednesday. Goodbye.